Talk us through what we're going to hear from the Chancellor today. We're all expecting her to reveal the scale of this black hole. Is this going to suggest that the last government willfully lied about the reality of the numbers, or was there a misinterpretation of the detail?
Well, we knew we were going to inherit a difficult situation at the election. We said that during the campaign. But what we've discovered since taking office a few weeks ago is that things were even worse than we thought. And the previous government was certainly guilty of running away from the situation. Let me give you a couple of examples. We were told, for example, that the Rwanda scheme was going to cost £400 million. We now found that it's £700 million, with billions more to be spent in future. The government were emptying the country's reserve to pay for other parts of their asylum policy. In addition to that, the Secretary of State for Education had a pay offer for teachers on her desk that nobody told anyone about during the election. And there are other pressures too. And when you take all of this and you add it all up, it adds to significant pressures on the budget this year, which we have to react to. And that reaction will be set out by the Chancellor this afternoon.
To the tune of £20 billion?
Well, I can't say the exact figure. We'll have to see what she says. But it's certainly a significant sum of money, and it requires us to take some difficult decisions. And we're not going to run away from that responsibility. And that's why the Chancellor is making a statement to Parliament on this afternoon.
Will the manifesto pledge not to increase the taxes that you pledge not to increase stand? And will this be focused more on spending cuts than tax increases?
Yes, the manifesto pledge will stand. And today is not about tax increases. Today is not a budget. Today is, I'm afraid, about some very difficult spending decisions that the Chancellor is going to be setting out.
I just wanted to read you some extracts from a report titled Public Finances in the 2024 General Election. It was published on the 25th of May. There was a subsection titled Inevitable Post-Election Trade-offs. This comes from the IFS. They say whoever presides over the post-election fiscal event is likely to have very limited fiscal room for manoeuvre. They go on and say the high-level spending plans published alongside the March budget imply cuts to some unprotected budgets. A reasonable estimate is that unprotected budgets face cuts of between 1.9% and 3.5% per year, or between £10 billion and £20 billion by 2028. Is it not fair to say that all of the information was out there? Both parties didn't want to address the pressures head-on in the election campaign, and that's perhaps why there's the ability to say, you know, the people don't know about this. But the detail was there already if you'd wanted to focus on it.
Well, we knew we were going to inherit a difficult position, and the IFS are correct about that. But the point of today is it is even worse than we thought, because there are things that we've discovered that weren't spoken about.
This is worse than the 20 billion that the IFS flagged.
It is worse than we thought during the election.
Than you thought, or the IFS flagged?
But worse than both. They will have to today, like everybody else, acknowledge that the budgetary pressures this year are higher than those set out in the OBR forecast before the March budget. That's going to be the picture that's revealed today.
So that's a striking revelation. You're saying that the details that the government gave to the OBR, the past government, gave to the OBR to publish their analysis was wrong. The government misled the OBR.
They are going to have to be revised today because there are in-year pressures that the government didn't tell us about. And that's what the new Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, will be setting out this afternoon.
So the government misled the OBR?
Well, they certainly ran away from the situation. They must have known that the cost of the Rwanda scheme was higher than they were telling the public. They must have known about the letter on the Education Secretary's desk about the public sector pay offer for teachers. They set the remit for these public sector peer review bodies. We didn't set the remit. They set the remit. They knew about these things. They must have known they were emptying the reserve to pay for their asylum policy, and therefore it wasn't available for other things that might happen during the course of the year. They were the incumbent government. And there's been a very revealing development since the election. The now Shadow Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has admitted to his shadow cabinet that they couldn't have afforded the tax cuts that they promised in the election this year. That's not what they were saying during the election. It is what they were saying now. It's highly revealing about what they knew while they were fighting that campaign.
It's going to be really interesting to hear the speech, but I think the most striking thing is it's not just what you're saying, it's not just what the government wanted the people to focus on, and you guys all talk about what you want to talk about when you come on, but that they specifically misled the OBR. That's a striking accusation.
Well, what you'll see today is a budget for this year that is higher than that the OBR were working on in March.
And that's not because of changing economic factors?
Well, I mean, we're only a few months into the financial year. It's only about 4 months into the financial year, so we've still got 2/3 of it to go.
Let's move on to talk about the situation in the Middle East. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, has spoken about the risk of escalation. Do you think this is the most worrisome moment of the war in many months, perhaps even to date?
I think this is very serious. Since October the 7th last year, we've all been focused on the situation in Gaza between Israel and Hamas. We have known that there's this other situation in northern Israel between Hezbollah and Israel, and that has the potential to be a much more serious situation than even the one that we've been watching unfold in Gaza over the last 10 months. So I think this is very serious. We, of course, hope that cool heads will prevail, but I think it is perfectly rational for people to be watching this with great concern right now.
Would Labour support Israel if it felt necessary to do a full ground invasion to respond to Hezbollah?
We will always argue for Israel's right to defend itself, but we hope in this situation that cooler and calmer heads will prevail and that we do not see a full-scale conflict between Israel and Hezbollah.
Pat McFadden, thanks so much for joining us. Much appreciated, as always.
Thank you.